So hello to anyone that tunes in, and here we have a winner. The '05 Cobalt on her third run just refused to quit at the Ring of Fire in Cochranton, PA, the only circle derby pit in this part of the country. I mean, really probably most, if not all, the eastern part of the country. So yeah, it was a wild ride, as you can see if you watch the pre-run video. My really nice caravan bumper, it held for a little bit, and in my poor weld defense, again, if you saw, third time I've ever welded probably, and just getting used to my MIG welder, not a heavy duty welder, but I mean, I think it's a nice welder, especially for what you pay and what it is. But I got slammed so many times in the right front. It's just total chaos in there, that you can see how bent the frame rail is there. And I was talking to a buddy, he said, yeah, the one side was out and it was kind of hanging for a while, and then it got knocked off. So yeah, in my defense, it took a beating, but something to improve. But yeah, the stick is still up, and you can see she was shortened quite a bit, but everything that shout out again to Shevitz and Lucas, local guys that are really good at building cars, Camrys for the Shevitz typically, but they just know their stuff. Lucas runs Cavaliers, but he just knows his stuff, and they help me out with a number of stuff. And you can see talking about welds, my kind of rear bar here, absolutely something that you need to do probably on the bigger tracks regardless. Even in the compact stock class that I run, but especially with a car that's pre-bent, it's, they're already rusted. Whenever they're kind of bent in, especially if you took a hard hit in the side, which this one did on the passenger side the first time I ran it, they're just kind of compromised even more then. So you really got to just be smart. And that weld held, and you can see it took quite a few licks. She just kept going. Ended up, I believe there was 18 of us in, we were maxed out, couldn't even be rolling at the start. We had to wait until the green flag, and then everyone took off. Kind of survived the first minute or so, and then from there, I was able to have some fun and get all the way down for the win. So again, continuing to just look at a couple things, and you can see how I got turned not only at the frame rail here, but that wheel took a little bit of a beating and got turned in. Haven't looked underneath if the spindle is bent, and again, the Cobalts, they have an aluminum spindle, which this car had stock. The Cobalt I ran last year had stock the first run, and you get hit in a wheel and they're likely breaking. This strut and spindle is steel. It's off a '04 Cavalier. Again, shout out to Lucas, who I bought the car off of. He had an old set, and while the control arm is off the Cobalt, we took the ball joint, just kind of bought a heavy duty ball joint and drilled through. Again, if you watch the other video, I showed how I drilled through it, bolted it down, and it clearly took more just hits as well as torque and everything, to where if I was stock aluminum spindle, probably the first wheel hit, I was busted, and 5 minutes in, done. So just another way. This car was a little bit unique and a little bit of a hybrid, but really worked out. And you can see how it's almost buckled in the middle whenever I took that hit. And again, this old girl, '05 Cobalt, she was rusted out something fierce, but that bar definitely kind of helped hold the pressure as I took toward the end, especially whenever I was struggling to some spare tires in there I threw in the back in case I might need it as I was going, in case trying to protect that side as much as I could. But toward the end, I wasn't moving well. The transmission was starting to heat up. In reverse, it would go in and kind of grab pretty quickly, but drive, it was usually like a 3-second delay before you could feel it grab. You can see how my battery box, it was a little bent before. You can see again, got slammed in the side toward the end and pressed right up. Again, fuel tank, that guy there, slide inside as much as you can. Again, see how close it was to pressing up to that. I mean, keep everything as tight as you can, and inside kind of your 4-point box here if you run. That's why a lot of guys, run the 4-point kind of frame. I usually just have run, especially lately, but the crossbar there. But man, it looks even more wild whenever you see it on the outside. It was fun. You can see my roof sign bolted down just like the Cobalt last year that was all bent up. It kind of buckled the top down toward the end. Had the GoPro in there, and I think it recorded all the way to the end. Haven't watched yet, but you could, I couldn't record while I was in there, and my wife was busy. My mom was actually watching our kids. My wife had an event, so I was there myself. So I recorded the other ones, the other features that is, but this one I just had the GoPro. So hopefully it came out like it did last year. Whenever I did that, you can at least see some footage, but great run. What a car. I'm telling you, I'm really warming up to the Cobalts, especially if you can get 04 to 07, I believe is the year where this Cavalier setup is in essence identical. No, you can see something else I wanted to point out. Right there at the corner took a couple hits, and you can see how it was starting. Even this was a clean, these were clean control arms off of the 07 Cobalt that I ran until it was scrapped last year. If you saw those videos, it had two great runs at the end, but just took different wheels. I think the one time I took a pretty good shot in this wheel and I could feel it kind of rattle a little bit, like I thought my wheel might be badly turned in, but I think that's what it was. And again, those tough struts and spindles, man, that steel, if you can get a vehicle with those, they clearly take more damage. All right, so here to look under. The only bad thing about these Cobalts, in my opinion, because that 2.2 Echo Tech is a monster of a little motor, it's that ginormous thing on top, that kind of air box that runs into the throttle body. Again, my Cobalt last year, I slammed a bumper through the radiator, through the core support, and it busted that up. I was able to kind of patch it together, and I actually used that one off of this car last year in the 07 Cobalt to get one more good run out of it. But that's kind of the only damage. And a couple times, especially when I lost my bumper, I pressed a little on that hood just to make contact toward the end as I was struggling, but I knew I didn't want to press any more in. You can see how it was right up to it, but still in its original place. We'll take that off, as well as, again, the loop line, which this is just an HC speed for looping your lines there. The pressure runs off, 18 bucks on Amazon. That works great. I mean, probably smarter really than running the stock radiator, although usually I leave the radiators in the first run when it's fresh and then kind of go from there. But great run. What a car. Again, she got 3 runs. First one was kind of just a quickie, see what I can do with it with the junk control arm. Second one, I got the one control arm off, couldn't get the other one. And then this third one, again, shout out to Lucas and Shevitz, helped me get that, had to hit the torch to it, but got that control arm off, at the new one on, and she ran all the way back to the trailer. So good run, good time, great way to start the year. Wanted to throw 2 more things on this video I forgot before I started tearing into it here, but taking off again, all the parts you can reuse. You know, my piece there for looping the radiator lines, I'll take those hoses off as they're a nice size for cars like this, the 4 cylinders especially. Again, my loop lines, take that out, reuse that for the transmission. This air box I took off, and as I was taking it off, again, if you watched my run last year with my 07 Cobalt, had a lot of problem. It was this air box that we used, and I re-glued that to the inside. Well, I had to actually beat this part of the car back here a little bit, the core support there, what's left of it at least, to get once I loosen it, get it off the throttle body, that air box, and that was completely separate. So I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Toward the end of the Derby there, it was really fluttering when I got in the gas, and that's the same thing that car did last year. But I wanted to show this. Here's the engine mount, which is completely broke. This was down in here, it was under the air box. So maybe the air box that was tightened down there helped keep that down there, but something else, whenever this frame rail got nailed, I assume that happened. But the other thing I wanted to point out was in here, if I didn't, again, this isn't typically how I run the battery, but it's directly wired. So here is the power for the fuel, and you have to make sure it is good and tight to your battery terminal, because if there's any sort of gap in there, it'll what happened is it'll trip your security system. And if that happens, you should be okay. Just turn the key to the on position with the terminals on. You have to take this off if the fuel's direct wired like mine is. And usually 8-9 minutes, it'll blink, and it'll blink the theft system light on your dash, and then it will go off. Turn the key off, turn it back on, it should turn over. Well, if you have the positive on, and again, you have to make sure that's on good. And I usually, with those little these little wire clamps, I usually wrap the wire around it, not just in it, so that then I can tape over it so it's like a really good grip where you're bolting in. But keep the positive on and just unhook the negative, because if you put the positive on and the negative. Like if you completely take power from it, I kept tripping the system, the theft system, to where the other way I didn't. If I just left the power, or positive rather, on and then just kept disconnecting the negative, I never tripped it. So again, what a run. Things you learn. And whew, she was holding on to the bitter end. We'll take the parts off we can reuse and scrap her.